This is The Law Show on CL 650. Now back to the show.
Can I get a witness? Can I get a witness? Can I get a witness? Somebody, is it right to be treated so bad?
Welcome back to the Law Show here with the little Marvin Gaye, Can I Get a Witness? Going on in the background here, our guests Gordon Maynard and Rudy Kischer from Maynard, Kischer, Stojicevic, Immigration and Citizenship Lawyers here in Vancouver, and online, by the way, at vancouverlaw.ca. Both our guests in studio this morning were recently in Ottawa at a gathering called the Continuing Legal Education Symposium. It happens every year. It's put on by the Canadian Bar Association, and it's all about immigration and citizenship matters. In this particular most recent gathering, we've been informed that a record number of lawyers from all over Canada attended, and along with government officials, the Minister of Immigration and so on. And the two matters, Rudy, and you went to two seminars on each of both Express Entry and the Foreign Workers Program, and that seemed to occupy the attention of most of your colleagues at the gathering as well.
Yeah, the one that I'd like to talk about is the labor market impact assessments, which is the process. Just to go over it briefly for everybody again, is if you're looking to hire a foreign worker, your first step is that you have to make an application, and you have to show that you've tried to recruit Canadians. So generally you have to do some advertising, and you also have to be paying what we call the median wage. So you've got to be paying what somebody in a similar profession in a similar area would be getting paid. So that Service Canada has this information that they've gathered through their research in terms of what the average person, let's say a plumber, makes in the city of Vancouver.
Right.
Let's say it's $30 an hour. You've got to pay this foreign worker at least $30 an hour.
Right.
They've now added a lot of requirements to that and we've seen this sort of come over the last 6 months. And one of the big ones is the requirement to have a transition plan. So a transition plan is to say, listen, number one, you're supposed to find Canadians first.
Right.
This is a temporary foreign worker program. Keyword temporary. So the plan is that person who comes over within 4 years, generally they should either becoming permanent residents, or you should be finding a Canadian to replace them. And so they've come up with this form that you've got to fill out and a plan that you've got to put forward that the employer has to put forward. And how are we getting out of this circumstance now that we need this foreign worker, right? And when the option is, so what is your transition plan? And the two major ones that they're looking at is either you're going to have to offer this person permanent residency, they've got a path to permanent residency, or you're going to find Canadians. It's been very, very frustrating for employers and lawyer practitioners in the area because it's unclear what they want in these transition plans. Right?
Okay.
For an example that we heard of is the person will apply under Express Entry. Eventually, when they come here, we'll make sure they do an English test, and we'll help them apply for permanent residency. When it comes, we'll give them a permanent job offer, so they'll qualify for the program.
Right.
That would seem like an average sort of answer. That if you had a couple more questions, the officer would call. It's refused. Right. So the large company, good job offer, refused. The lawyer that was speaking at the conference went through the package and said, okay, we're going to put together a solid proof package where, puts together, 2 inches of basically documents saying, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is the English program they're going to take. This is the program why we think they're going to qualify under it. This is how we'll prepare it. And, goes through a very detailed transition. Calls up and says, that's not what we wanted. That's ridiculous. You're just gouging your client. You give me something more reasonable. So, it was too little to begin with.
And then it was too much.
Then it was too much. The poor client on the end is just sitting there crying going, well, I don't know what these people want,
Well, the lawyers don't know what they want.
Let me try to understand this, because you're right, both of you, that the temporary or the foreign workers has been front page news in this country since the new year. And there are a lot of us that don't understand a lot of even what they're trying to do. Who gets in, for example? If you are an employer, Rudy, and you there's a labor shortage. You need workers, and if foreign workers are fine, no problem. Let's just get some bodies in those positions and let's get going. We're short of people. So do you have to prove to the government of Canada that you can't find a Canadian to do the work before you're even allowed to bring in foreign workers?
Yeah, that's a requirement of the job. You've got to show that you've genuinely tried to recruit Canadians, and those requirements are getting much more difficult to prove in the sense that they're almost sometimes I would say unreasonable. For example, if you say, well, the address of the employment is going to be in Burnaby, right, for an executive position, we had a refusal, that said, well, you didn't give us the street address. Well, we know the job's in Burnaby. How much difference is it going to be to the executive of a company where the work is? And if it's 2 streets over, that's going to make a difference as to whether they're going to be wanting to take that job, whether Canadians are going to be interested in the job.
Seems rather a whimsical refusal.
I think the message from the government has been Canadians first,
right?
And therefore, the department has taken that, I think, a little too much to heart and sort of looking at it and basically trying to, if every I isn't dotted and every T is not crossed, the application is going to be refused, right? And these transitional plans, we're not sure what they want, right?
And that was a big complaint, and the government acknowledged it, that there's inconsistency across Canada on what's expected in the transitional plans.
Okay.
I mean, I think one of the good things that's come out is if you have a transitional plan, they have now priority processing for somebody who is assisting. If the LMIA is in assistance of somebody applying for permanent residency, they are fast-tracking these applications.
And what again is an LMIA?
A labor impact assessment. So what is bringing in these foreign workers, how is that going to impact the labor market
And
in the
who
area?
provides the LMIA?
That's provided by Service Canada.
Oh, the government does.
Yeah.
I see. Oh.
Yeah.
But isn't there a danger there, Gordon, in the government sort of serving up reports that satisfy its agenda rather than dealing with individuals on a case-by-case basis?
Welcome to our nightmare.
I've kind of nailed it, have I?
Yeah. And it's not just the problem with transitional plans. When Rudy talks about the transitional plans, that's for what they call the high salary workers.
Right.
For the low salary workers, which is anybody earning less than the provincial median salary, it doesn't matter if you can't find Canadians. They put a cap on it. And the cap was put at 30% last year. This June it goes to 20%, and next year it goes to 10%. And so if you're in a business that had 10% workers, foreign workers, a year ago, you're stuck at that, and you cannot go above it. You cannot go above it. Even if you can't find a Canadian, too bad.
And so you can imagine the problem if you've got a business with 10 employees.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you can't have a foreign worker, right? I mean, so you're a small restaurant. Guess what? You've relied on a foreign chef being there, and what they consider, a median wage in BC, I think now is what, $21? $22. So you're paying your chef $20 an hour. That's not good enough, right? That foreign worker will have to leave. Right?
Now, I'm thinking specifically of Alberta, where, of course, the oil, the plummet in the value of oil has really whacked the economy, and a lot of foreign workers in unskilled positions brought in to work in burger joints and so on are suddenly out of work because the demand has fallen way off. The economy's in the tank. What happens to those people, Gordon? Do we unceremoniously toss them to the curb?
They're looking for those marriages of convenience. Yeah, they are out of luck. They are out of luck because if the economy plummets and it's hard for Canadians to find jobs, then there's further restrictions on access to foreign workers.
Right.
And so before, 2 years ago, when the economy was doing well in Alberta, you couldn't bring in enough foreign workers.
Yeah.
And now there's too many.
Yes.
That's a very local problem for the industry.
But do those people, do they just get told to leave? Your services are no longer required.
Well, they've got a work permit.
Job.
They've got a work permit, but the work permit says you can only work for Bob.
Okay.
But it gives them status in Canada, just they can't work. Now, what are they going to do? They're going to try and find a job with another employer in a region where there is room for a foreign worker.
Right.
But if they can't find one, they're out of luck.
And they have to support themselves somehow. And most of, a lot of foreign workers, they're also supporting somebody back at home.
Sure, of course
right?
they
So
are.
they're keeping the family going at home, and they depend on these jobs, and then they can't work legally for anybody else. It starts to create problems.
And then you start creating that underground economy where people are working under the table so as not to be recognized, and so they can at least eat while they're trying to deal with their legal issues.
Yeah, or waiting for that job to come. So there's a backlog. If you're going through the labor market impact assessment, the employer says, "I will hire you.
Okay.
Right? I'm going to hire you, but I got to get this LMIA. So I'm going to go to the government. That's going to take me 3 or 4 months." So what does Fred do in the meantime? How does he survive during that time? He's not allowed to work for anybody else. He's got to live off his savings or have the family who's depending on him send him money. They probably don't have any money to send him. It becomes a very, very difficult circumstance.
We've had a lot of discussions in the office about the impact of the changes to the foreign worker program.
Okay.
And I think it's fair to say that there are segments of society, there's segments of foreign workers where maybe not enough was being done to find Canadians for the job. You didn't need a foreign worker for the job. And I think we can all imagine what kind of jobs those are. Entry-level, low-skilled jobs.
Yep.
Perfect for high school graduates, perfect for early post-secondary graduates. But there are other jobs where it makes perfect sense to bring in a foreign worker. Unfortunately, the rules that have been implemented by the government apply across the board. And this is those hard and fast rules applying to everybody, which is never a good idea. But that's what's been done. And this is why you find different segments of the economy right now pleading to the government for exemptions from the rules. And it depends who has the eye of the ears of the minister to get those exemptions.
You know, something we haven't talked about in terms of the LMIA process that was talked about at the conference was the big change to the living caregiver program. So that program has totally been changed. There used to be a living caregiver program where if you needed a nanny at home to take care of your kids, you wanted to go back to work, you wanted somebody in the home. That program that has been around, I think it's been around for close to 20 years. That program, they basically got rid of it in the last 6 months, and they have now started with a program where they don't have to be live-in, right? That the nanny doesn't have to live in. They can live out, which would seem and was advocated where it was more autonomy for the individual, not having to live in the home of their employer. It was safer that. But what they've also done with that is they've increased the advertising requirements for these nannies, and they've also increased the wage. So there's been almost a 33% increase in wage. Before, where nannies were making $10.25, $10.50 an hour, where that was the minimum they had to be paid. They're now having to get paid $15 to $16 an hour.
Right.
And it's caught a bunch of people, I think, vulnerable people, nannies that have come to work, have left their families, have been here for years. This program is no longer available. So you can imagine someone who's working, let's say for an elderly person, that person passes on. The nanny's under this program, living caregiver, has to go find work now. She's been here for, let's say, 18 months. Right. She has to live in the home under the old program for 6 months. She's got to find somebody else who's going to be able to hire her. She was making $10.25. She now has to get paid 30% more.
Right.
How is she going to find that job? She sacrificed, on a promise, on a set of rules that were here, planning to move her family here, has been here for 3 years, and now, is out of luck.
The latest from Ottawa, and not always the best of news, is it? Our guests, Gordon Maynard and Rudy Kischer from Maynard, Kischer, Stojicevic, citizenship and immigration lawyers here in Vancouver and online at vancouverlaw.ca. More still ahead on The Law Show. Stay with us. We're right back after this.
There's more of the show still ahead. This is The Law Show on CL 650.